So this video is going to directly follow from the last video, okay? So if you didn't watch the last video, none of this is going to make any amount of sense to you. But if you did, this is going to have lots of more important fundamentals for you to understand here. We're going to cover version control with Git. We're going to do virtual environments, deployment, and answer the second viewer question with some scheduling. But before we do any amount of that, we have got to stop the bot from threatening nations with missile attacks. Let's get into it. So the bot's been running for about a week or so now, and it's been a lot of fun. Like I am enjoying this very much. I'm going off twice a day so I can enjoy these tweets in my feed. And a lot of them are pretty amusing. I got some of my favorites here. Had there been a computer in 1872, it would probably have predicted that there would be so many horse-drawn vehicles that it would be impossible to clear up all the manure. Like that just happened to go to an old farm guy. That's great. I'm sure he enjoys horses. And then being terrified is just the beginning. A little ominous, but okay. Then there's this. We are confident we can penetrate any enemy defenses with our missiles. We know that we are more than equal to any nation in the world. Now, fortunately, this went to a game dev who took this in stride and actually quoted back another quote from the bot. But imagine if this went to a school, because there's a lot of schools that have Horace in the name. Or, like, this could have gone so wrong so fast. Like, if it made some sort of threat against the president or something like that. Like, I'm really, really glad that this screw up, and this was a major screw up on my part. I should have foreseen these kind of things. I'm really glad that this screw up went to a game dev who had a good sense of humor. We need to make sure that this never happens again. So let's do that. Getting into the code here. We also need to address a problem with some Linux distributions. They don't like it when you're calling inside of a project like this. So like we've got this module called epigraph, and I'm calling that module from inside that module, and it works fine on Windows. It probably works on most Linux distributions, but some were not. So let's just do this the right way in case you encounter the same problem. We're going to create a new file. Oh, whoops, I'm putting that in the wrong place. Outside of the epigraph, and we'll just call this main. Now, in our initial init here, let's change this from the if name equals main. We're going to do def main here. And now inside this new main file, it's outside of the module. We're going to import from epigraph import main. And now we'll do the main clause thing here. In PyCharm, I just do main and tab, and it automatically fills in the dunder name dunder main thing for me. And now whoops, I've found a problem there. It also tries to do that if you're trying to call the function main. But okay, we got that now. So this should work just fine. Instead of calling it from inside the init, we're calling it outside of the module. So if you encountered any problems, the exact error message is something like no module name, even though it's clearly that module name because it's that module it's running. So if you encounter that problem, this is the solution. Just make another file outside of that module. All right, so moving on, let's fix this. I have made a list of bad words. This includes things like missile and bomb and warhead and all kinds of different like guns and stuff like that. And I don't want to scroll too far down this list. It includes like things like ambush and assault and all of the living presidents. And every single racial slur I could come up with on the internet, which turned out to be quite a long list. As you see, like I'm only scrolled down this far, and now we get into the racial slurs. Like I'm really trying to make sure that this bot is not going to threaten any presidents, schools, or anyone else for that matter. Now let's make sure that our quotes here are going to not include any of those words. So we're going to do the same thing we were doing over here, where we were loading up these YAML files, because this is just another YAML file. It's a big list of things. So we're going to do the same exact thing over here. So in this case, we're going to go over here into quotes and with open, let's see, it's bad words.yaml as file, and then we need to import YAML. Load file read, and remember the loader YAML.loader, and we'll assign that to bad words. All right. So now, when we're going through and we're checking the quotes, we're checking the length of the quotes. Now let's also add a bad check. So we'll say is bad equals false. And now for word in bad words, it's going to loop through every single word in the bad words list and check if word is in the quote. Then we're going to set the is bad to true. And now outside of this for loop, we're going to say if is bad, or if not is bad, then we're going to append it. So we will not get any quotes that include any of the banned words. Let's make sure that this actually worked. Oh, whoops. Okay, that's actually easy fix. I was running the wrong thing. All right. No errors. Let's go back, see if we got a new tweet. Yes. Once a nation acknowledges publicly that it is corrupt, there is a weakening, a listlessness, a nihilism, where personal appetites and longings for celebrity outweigh what was once understood as common virtue. God, this bot is so fun. And now Horace Lim has to deal with that. So as you see, this bot is just running on its own twice a day, and I'm really enjoying following it because it really is just some random whimsy in my day. But there's some things you need to know before you start deploying to servers. So we're going to cover some of that, but the stuff we're going to be covering here is really, really useful to just writing clean code, and it's going to be very worthwhile even if you never deploy anything to a remote server. So the first thing that we need to learn about is virtual environments. You see how this terminal has this like paren venv thing going on. And what that means is everything that we've been doing, all the stuff we've been pip installing, has been going into this private venv, which is actually a private version of Python. It takes whatever version of Python you say that you want to be using, and it packages it as its own separate siloed entity that will not be broken by anything else. So you see all the things that we've installed here. We've got requests, we got TweePy and all of its dependencies, like all of the things that it needed. It needed urllib and oauthlib and all these other things. All of those went into this special directory instead of being in our main Python directory. So this keeps the main Python directory clean, but it also means that any changes to any of these packages won't break anything else. So like, let's say you're using this and this is fine, and you forget about it for 6 months or whatever, and you're moving on to another project and you need to download a new version of some of these things. Like let's say oauthlib has some change to it that completely breaks all previous versions. So now it's working in your new project, but then it breaks your old project from 6 months ago. But you don't have to worry about that. Like if you're doing it in virtual environments, they're in a silo. Okay, so the new version of oauthlib is in your new project, and the old version is in your old project, and you'll see that every single one of these things has a specific version attached to them. So whenever you're installing for that project, it's always going to get the version that actually worked. Like this is really, really important. Virtual environments save you so many headaches. Like I wasn't using virtual environments for like the first year that I was doing this, and I made just a mess out of servers that I was installing all this stuff to and getting all kinds of weird incompatibility things. So like seriously, use virtual environments always. All right. Now I'm using PyCharm, so I'm covered. Like it automatically makes these virtual environments for me. But when you go to deploy one of these, you need to make a new environment for the deployment. So I'll show you that process, because this is basically how this is going to work for if you're not using PyCharm or whatever. Like the process is going to be the same across all platforms. So even if you're not deploying this to a remote server, if you're using like VS Code or whatever, you need to make your own virtual environment, it's going to be basically the same thing. So I'm going to first make a directory. We'll call this epigraph, spelled with an I to prevent confusion down the road here. And I'm go in here and I'm going to say specifically which Python version I want to use. Like there's probably 2 or 3 different versions of Python installed on this machine. So I'm going to say, I want Python 3.7, and I'm do -m, which is telling it I want to use a specific module, and that module is called venv. And now I need to give it a directory that I want it to go to, which in this case is also going to be venv. That might be confusing. This is the module. This is the target. It's going to now make... All right, I had to look this up. I'm glad that we encountered this error. This is actually a common thing for Ubuntu because of the way that the Python that it's delivered on Ubuntu is split up in a whole bunch of different things. So you got a sudo apt install different stuff for different versions of Python. So for 3.7, we actually need to say that we want the venv. There's also a -dev that is already installed here. But that's a separate thing. So if you encounter this error, that's the solution. And now when we do this, it should work. And it did. All right. So now we've got this venv, and in here we've got our own little private version of Python, and this is perfect. All right. So let's go back to what we've got here locally. Now, you see that I've already got all of this stuff installed here. I've actually got a requirements file. Let me delete this because this is the part I want to show you what I'm going to do here. So we've got all these packages that we require. So how do we tell the remote server to install all these exact packages? Pip has a command called freeze, which will just list out all of its dependencies. So we can do a pip freeze and then this greater than symbol requirements.txt. And now we've got a requirements text that just like the one I just deleted, that now has all of the things that we need and the specific versions that we need. You see the equals, that's indicating do not install any other version than this very specific version that I require. So this is going to be very handy for our deployment. But before we do that now, we've got to get into Git. So version control is the idea that you're saving a very specific copy of all of your source code as one specific version. And any changes that you make to that code, you would save as a new version. And this is super handy. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of, like, even if you're doing small home projects, this is so handy because if you fuck up, and you will fuck up, you can always revert to some old version. And there are other advantages to it in that it makes it super easy to now deploy anything that you've been uploading to your Git repository. So there's a few things that I want to make very clear here. Okay, there's Git, the version control software. There's GitHub, which is a repository, and there are lots of other Git repositories. So these are just sites that let you upload your Gits to them. So step one is going to be getting Git. You need to download that for Windows and Mac. I'm pretty sure most Linux distros include it. If not, it's a sudo apt get git, and you're good. We'll get into the repositories in just a sec. Let me show you how, once you've got this installed, all you have to do to use this is git init in the directory that you want to initialize as your Git source root. And now we've initialized an empty Git repository. And now we can add files to that. So like, let's add our bad words file to that. Git add badwords.yaml. And if I come back up here, this should pick up that it's now got a Git. And it does, yes. Okay, so PyCharm has a lot of things in here that automatically work well with Git. So you see how bad words is now green. That means that it's awaiting commitment, and the other ones here are all red, which means they haven't been added as Git files. So we can manually do that, git add. It would actually be faster to do this whole directory, but I don't want to add the secrets. Remember, we don't want our secrets file to be on our Git repository because then we're giving away our API codes. And most Gits like GitHub want you to have publicly viewable Gits, and you don't want your secrets out in the open like that. So I'm going to manually add the files from that directory. I'm going to leave the dupe list out. And the reason for that is if there are ever any changes between the deployed version and this version, there's going to be a conflict. So for this instance, I'm just going to leave that out. And we do want our main.py, and we especially want our requirements.txt. So now we've got all this. We need to deploy this up into our repository. So you could use GitHub. I happen to like Bitbucket. So I'm just going to create a new repository here. And now it's done it. Now I need to, it's giving me some instructions. These are very helpful instructions. So we just tell it to add remote origin, and we tell it that this is where our repository origin is for the oh, here, I'll show you in a sec here. So we just copy and paste that. And now we've got to tell it the second line there, which is that we want to push to that origin master. And I'm not going to get into it for this video, but you can have different branches where you can say, I'm not sure why I just got that error. Let's see if I can just do one like this. So PyCharm has this built-in thing where it's automatically picked up that there's a Git and I'm trying to commit the changes. So let's see if it's going to let me do it to that remote. You need to give some sort of commit message. And I say commit and push. And push. And push successful. So now we've got this remotely. We can actually check now on this website here, and we should see the files that we've uploaded. Perfect. All right, so that worked. I'm not sure what that error message was about, but moving on. So now over here, back in the root directory that I want to deploy to, I can do a git clone of this. So there's usually some sort of a clone button that you click and copy, and it actually has the git clone already written in there. So I do that. Use a strong, oh shit. I was going to tell you to use a strong password and I got lost typing in mine. A strong password. All right. So now, over here, we've got all of the stuff. And give me a second here. Now I got to add our secrets and everything. Okay, now I've created the dupe list and secrets file manually with all the data that they need. So now all that's left to do is install all of the requirements, and this will be running on this remote server. So to do that, we need to activate our virtual environment. So this is actually different on different operating systems. So I'll show you here on Linux and probably Mac OS. We just go to the place that this is in. So it's venv bin, or yeah, that's right, source venv bin activate. And now we've got that venv here. On Windows, it's a little weird. We've got to go in a different direction. We got to do the venv bin. Shit, hold on, I gotta remember. It is amazing how many times I have tried to LL right here. Okay, I think I remember how to do this now. It's we got to venv and then scripts. Is it not? Fuck. Oh, you know what? I think I figured out the problem. All right, let's try this. Venv. No, fuck. I think I'm doing my backslashes wrong on Windows. That's it. That's it. All right, there we go. God. All right, so we're not sourcing, we're venving, and we're backslashing differently, but it's venv scripts activate. And now, there we go. So you only have to do that on Windows. On everything else, it is simply to source the venv bin activate. And then we've got that. Now we've got that on the remote server. We can use our requirements file here by just doing 8. Like, oh wait, hold on. I just remembered another thing to point out here. You want to make sure that the venv is correct. So do a pip -- version, and it'll tell you where it is pulling this pip from. And you see it is pulling it from the virtual environment inside of Epigraph. If this was not, it would be something like bin/python back here or something like that. But this is actually pulling it from our specific little silo. So that's good. So now we just do a pip install -r to tell it we're doing a requirements file. And our requirements file was in ACP6 requirements. And it does it. It automatically installs all of the things that it needs. So now, while I've been actually doing this, Horace, the bot has gone off. So there's a new tweet automatically. I want to just clear that up so that now we're going to do a manual one here, just to make sure that our deployment is successful. So we get into ACP6. Python now goes into that very specific Python that we have in this virtual environment. So I can just say Python, what do we call this, main? Yeah. Please work. It worked. It gave it a fucking date, but it worked. I really need to figure out some way to filter out dates. But the bot did its thing on a remote server. And now we can get into scheduling it, which was the second user submitted question was once again by Mitch Slayton of the Audio Dabbler, who asked, how do we actually schedule this thing to do this stuff? And that's really, really easy on Linux and Mac, but it's tricky on Windows. So I'm going to show you first the Linux and Mac, where we just do cron tab E, and the cron tab, I think is chronology table is the full name of this thing, is some really goofy looking archaic shit. Okay, like let's just be honest about this. This is really goofy. This is really archaic. And usually I don't like doing anything with archaic stuff, but when archaic stuff is as reliable as this is, it's worth doing. It's like a bad idea that works isn't such a bad idea. And if a bad idea works consistently, it's a great idea. So, you're frankly going to screw up this stuff a lot if you have no familiarity with it. But basically the first thing here is the minutes. So what minute of an hour do you want it to go off? And don't pick 0 if it's going to be doing anything to any remote servers, because everybody's hitting those servers on the 0 minute of an hour. So let's say the 23rd minute of every hour. And what hour do we want it to do this on? So if we put a star here, it'll do it every hour on the 23rd minute of that hour. But we don't want it to do that. So we can say like every 16th hour, something like that. It's going to be in 24-hour time, and it'll be based on whatever your server's on. So if your server's on UTC, this is now, oh shit, I don't even want to do the math on that. But you get what I'm saying. This is 24-hour. This is the 16th hour of that 24-hour. And then the rest of these, you could say specifically like on a day of a month, or a specific month, or a day of the week. So actually, you see above, I've got 1, so that's Sunday. On Sunday, it's running my backup thing. But now we've got that. And if you have any problems, there's lots of things that like cron tab, formatter. There's things that'll help you like pick exactly where you want it. Like just Google some cron tab generator and it'll help you. So if this doesn't work for you, just use that. So now we want to say to use the, oh God, I gotta keep all these straight. Epigraph. We want it to use the virtual environment that we created. So we want to do venv and then Python. I think this is right. Let me save that real quick and double check. No, it's going to be in a bin. Okay. All right, use that version of Python in our virtual environment to run home tim bin epigraph ecp6 main.py. Now, the rest of the stuff you see up here is exactly the same way that requirements text. We do a greater than sign and we pipe the log somewhere. So I'll do home tim log epigraph.log. And I honestly forget exactly what the 2 and 1, it's specific to some kinds of output, like 1 is errors and 2 is status, something like that. You want to add that though, or else you're going to get a whole bunch of messages from your server. So that's it. Like, I know I just said that's it, like that was simple, but it really is simple. Like it's really damn long commands, but it's a very simple command. We're just saying, use the Python at this location and run this Python file with that Python, and then put it in a log file, and do that every time it is 1623. And we save, and like that's it. And then this will automatically do that based on whatever the time of this. I think it's on UTC, so I should probably make sure that doesn't actually happen. If you decide that you don't want your cron tabs to do something, just come back in here. You don't have to delete it. You can just go to the bottom and put a hash right in front of it, and it'll comment that out so it won't run that. So now is going to be the tricky part. I'm going to try to show you scheduling on Windows. All right, so to do any kind of Windows task scheduling, you need the Windows Task Scheduler, which is fortunately installed with Windows. So once you get that running, you can create a task. I'll show you the real one and not the basic one because the wizard's kind of dumb. We'll just call this epigraph. And for triggers, we want to set when we want this to run. So we want it to run daily, and you can set the time or whatever. And like you could do all kinds of fancy, but honestly, this is all you need. Daily. You could say that do this task maybe a few times a day or whatever, but just make sure that it is enabled. This is the important part. Daily and enabled. Okay. And now we want to assign the actions. And this is where things get a little tricky because you can use a Python file as your thing here most of the time in Windows. Like you can just run a Python file and it runs because it's associated with Python, but it doesn't always work in Task Scheduler. I don't know why this is. It's a pain in the ass, but that doesn't matter because we're not going to use this like this anyhow because remember, we want to use our virtual environment. So we can't just use the generic Python that you get whenever you're in a command prompt. We want to use the specific Python that we have in our virtual environment. So instead of telling it to use the Py file, we'll go into our virtual environment and scripts, and you'll see that there's a bunch of executables, including this python.exe. But you don't want to run the python.exe because this, when it runs through its schedule, will pop up a big black console window at you to flash briefly on the screen. If you use Python W, it will not do that. It'll just make it do it silently in the background. This is a really, really important thing to keep in mind because you don't want random Python windows popping up at you throughout the day. So python w.exe, and now we're going to use the command arguments that is the path to our file. So I just copied that from here and I pasted it right there. And now it will run this Python. God, it's too long to actually show it all, but it's going to run that. And I assure you, I've actually tested it. This works. And it's going to run the main.py running this python w.exe without any pop-up windows. And it's going to do that every day at 4:34 p.m. So we've covered a lot of ground. Like I hope that this answers Mitch's question no matter what operating system he's on. I don't actually know for certain that you can do cron tab on Mac OS by default. Like, you might have to homebrew install that or something like that, but it should totally be able to do the cron tab on Mac OS with a little bit of effort. And I think I covered all the really important things. Like, do not use a .py as your main command in the Windows scheduler, or you're just going to be wondering, well, why is my thing not running most of the time? And it's weird that it runs sometimes, but it will not run all the time. Let's see, we covered it all. Like, I'm feeling good about this video. I hope you're feeling good about this video. Thank you very much to my one patron, Benjamin Ford. Thank you very much. And I would hope very much that other people will join you soon. Take it easy, folks.